rhubarb and ginger pavlova. I'm going to use the Hakanoa ginger syrup in every stage of this, starting with the rhubarb. A bunch or 3 cups when it's chopped is about what you want. Get rid of rhubarb leaves, they're highly poisonous. You're just going to cut it into short lengths. Now I'm going to toss the rhubarb in ginger syrup. I use about 3 tablespoons and just toss that to coat the rhubarb. Now you're going to put this in an oven-proof dish, covered in tin foil, and you put it in the oven at a low heat, 150, and leave it there for about 30 or 40 minutes. Now we're going to make the pavlova bit. And the first thing we're going to do is crack our eggs. Now, contrary to popular belief, for a pavlova or a meringue, old eggs are quite good. You actually want your egg whites to have their proteins quite relaxed. So if your eggs are sort of getting to close to their 2-week use-by date, then they're really good for meringues, pavlovas, that kind of thing. I'm now going to separate the eggs from the whites. I'm going to do it the old school way. I can't do the rock and roll way. This way, you get the most egg white possible. And you'll see, because the eggs are kind of old, the white separates from the yolks really easily. You've still got to be super careful not to get any yolk in your egg white mixture, or it won't fluff up. We've got 6 egg whites in here. The egg whites just need a little pinch of salt. Those are ready to whip. 2 cups of sugar. You need to use caster sugar. You can't just use plain ordinary sugar because otherwise it won't dissolve in the egg whites when you're beating it. You want it in a jug where you can dispense it a little bit at a time. 2 teaspoons of corn flour. 1, 2. The flavourings that we're going to put in with the pavlova, also we might as well mix those together because they're all going in at once. We need 1.5 teaspoons of cider vinegar. This is the other thing that makes sure that your pavlova is marshmallowy on the inside. The acidity from the vinegar helps keep things soft. So 1.5 teaspoons. You also need 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla essence. And then Hakanoa ginger syrup. That's 1 tablespoon of that. And the ginger syrup just takes the edge off the pavlova. You know, usually a plain pavlova, it almost makes your eyes water, that sweetness. The ginger syrup doesn't add a gingery flavour. What it does is it adds a caramelly note. And mix those 3 things together so that they're ready to roll when you're ready to add them to your beaten egg whites. Now that those things are ready, we're going to whip the egg whites. This mix is, I think, 20 years old and probably cost me about 20 bucks when I first bought it. It's really good because I can feel what's going on in the bowl. We're going to beat to something called soft peaks here, and I'm going to show you the difference between soft and hard peaks. You'll see as you're going with the beaters, they start to make tracks through the egg whites. That's when it's got to the first sign of it being in soft peaks. And when you flop it up like that, see how the peak of egg white flops over? That's a soft peak. Now that it's at this point, we're just going to add the sugar, but a little bit at a time. It's very important not to put it all in at once. So you just need to put a sprinkle. Just enough to coat. And then beat it out. When that bit's mixed in, then sprinkle some more and beat it again. You've got to do a little bit and then mix it in. It's like making mayonnaise. If you try to do it too fast, the whole thing will just fall apart. Okay, I've got all the sugar in now, and my meringue mixture is starting to look really shiny and very thick. But here's the point where people usually stop, and they stop too soon. The sugar's not dissolved in the egg white yet. How you know, take a little bit of your mixture on the end of your finger and thumb and rub it together. If you can still feel some grit in there, then the sugar's not dissolved yet, and you should keep beating until it feels smooth. That is now dissolved, so now we can add our other flavorings. We're going to put in the mixture of vanilla and vinegar and ginger syrup that's in here, and then we're going to sprinkle the corn flour. Again, trying to get an even spread over the whole thing. Now we're doing something called folding it in. Take a large flat spoon, pull it towards you, sharp end towards you so that you're not squashing the mixture. Flip it up and over. Spin the bowl around. do the same again. The whole idea is that you are mixing it in such a way that you are not squashing all the air out of your mixture. So now we're going to prep it to put it in the oven. For this we're going to need a baking sheet and some baking paper. These thin ones are particularly good because they don't buckle when you put them in the oven. And your baking paper, non-stick. You want enough to cover your sheet and wrap around it a little bit. You need a pen and you need something round that's smaller than this. This is my favourite plate to use for tracing. So draw a circle on your piece of paper and then turn your piece of paper over so you don't get ink on your pavlova. Now the aim of this is to get all of that pavlova mixture inside the circle. When you put it in the oven and it cooks, it's going to swell up. So you don't want it to fall over the edges and you don't want it to fall off the edge of your plate either. So put all of your mixture inside here. You'll see it's pretty solid. So using the back of the spatula, twirl it around and make a sort of a hole in the middle. I usually do little twirls like that, kind of decorative. Believe me, it's much easier to do this with your finger than with any other implement, and you get to lick it afterwards. Isn't that great? And there is your pavlova, ready to go in the oven. The oven is at 150 degrees, that's very low. And ideally, you're going to leave it in here overnight. It's going to cook for 45 minutes at 150. Then you're just going to switch it off and leave it in there. Okay, the last bit, assembling your pavlova. You need cream. You need 2 bottles of cream. And you're going to whip it with 2 tablespoons of Hakanoa ginger syrup. Now, your rhubarb, which is cooled down completely now. Just squash it gently, just to break up the pieces. You don't want to turn it into a complete sauce or syrup. Rhubarb's much better with a little bit of texture still left in it, and so often when you get rhubarb it's been stewed down to just sort of strings and juice, and it's not nearly as nice to eat. Pour all the rhubarb into the bowl in the middle of the pavlova. If rivers of rhubarb juice run through the cracks in the pavlova, hurrah, that is going to make it taste amazing. Once you've done that, all the cream just goes on the top. This should now sit for about an hour before you eat it. Not in my house, it doesn't. It usually goes straight away. But it is much better if you leave it sitting for about an hour for the cream and the juice in the pavlova to all kind of melt together. If you want to decorate it, maybe a tiny few drops of ginger syrup, but that's it. It's a very delicious rhubarb and ginger pavlova.